We're in a new series called Strength in Numbers, in which we're talking about friendship. And last week, Matt talked about how our friends determine the direction and quality of our life. He mentioned that we all have the ability to choose good friends that help us win in life. And this week, I want to look at what it looks like to be a good friend and to notice when you're in a good friendship or relationship. When you think about a good friend, who's someone that comes to mind for you? I know for me, an example would be my childhood best friend growing up. We've been friends for 16 years, so you'd think by now we'd have this whole friendship thing figured out. And while we still have bumps in the road sometimes, just like every relationship, I always feel like she's there for me. I know that I can go to her at any time and she will sit down and listen and give me advice with my best interest at heart. I know that if I'm bored, I can call her and we can go do something, and I know that she will always be for me. I don't know if any of y'all have felt this, but for me, when I am with a group of people, or even just one friend that I have a good relationship with, it automatically makes me feel good about myself. And I think the only way that I can really explain this further is by explaining the opposite too. Because imagine how you would feel hanging out with a group of friends and they were mean to you. I know this happened to me a lot in middle school, specifically my 6th grade year, where this group of girls that I was really good friends with decided that they didn't want to be my friend anymore. I got a text one day after school saying that they had voted and decided they didn't like me anymore. For months after, they would make jokes about me, hang out without me, and told everyone in our class that they shouldn't be friends with me. I was torn because I knew that these weren't the types of people that I should keep in my life, but at the time, they felt like my only friends. So I was afraid to leave and have no one. It just hurt and it did not make me feel good about myself. And based off of that, and you may agree based off your circumstances or past experiences, I think it's true to say that when we surround ourselves with bad friends, we feel bad about ourselves. And you may hear that and think, well, that's obvious, but how do I know if I have a good or bad friendship? How do you know when you're being honored in a friendship or relationship? And how do I honor others and prevent myself from becoming a bad friend? I think the best resource we have to answer that question comes from the Bible. And specifically, I want to look at a chapter of the Bible called Romans. And Romans was written by a man named Paul. In this chapter, Paul writes, "Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves." Now, I wanted to use this verse because personally, I feel like this is one of those verses in the Bible that you have to reread several times, because at first glance, it kind of looks like Paul is saying, honor one another above yourself, don't honor yourself. But when you really look into the meaning of the verse, what Paul is actually saying is honor others the way God honors others, and you're included in that. In order to honor other people, we also have to honor ourselves. Just to break that down for y'all a little more, when we treat people the way God sees them, it's automatically going to be in a loving way, because that's how God sees them. And when we look at ourselves the way God sees us, it's automatically going to be in a loving way, because that's how God sees us. Paul is telling us that the best way we can be a good friend is by loving ourselves and loving others the way that God loves us and others. And when he mentions honor one another above yourselves, he's saying that we should take into account other people's feelings before we act. We should consider how what we say or what we do can affect the people around us. So, going back to our question from before, how do you know you're in a healthy relationship? How do you know you're a good friend? How can we help ourselves if we are in an unhealthy friendship? I think the best way to answer that is actually with another question, which is, are you loving and honoring each other? Meaning, are you making the choice when you're with them and when they're not there to not talk badly about them, to encourage them and lift them up, to listen and help when you can? Are you seeing them and treating them the way God would if he was physically in the room with you in the moment? And the same when you're deciding if your friends are good friends. If your value is in Jesus and what he's done for you, are you being treated that way? Are your friends encouraging to you? Do they honor you when you're not in the room? Do they always put themselves first and ever think of you? Do you trust that you can actually talk to them and they won't tell everyone around you what you talked about? Good friends choose to honor and love each other the way that God loves and honors all of us. In relationships, this isn't always easy. It can be hard to tell if you're being treated in a loving way, and it definitely can be hard to admit when you're not and to figure out what to do with that. Relationships can be hard to navigate, but if our value and everyone else's value is in God, and if the way we treat each other shows that, then we are automatically honoring ourselves and others around us, and we are automatically being a good friend.